Hello everyone, this is part 2 of my video on APA style for EME 6062. In the first video, I showed how to locate two journal articles and then format them in APA style using Microsoft Word and online resources, mainly the APA style blog. Now that we have these two articles, you would obviously have 10 articles for this assignment. I'm going to show you how to put them into your manuscript if you are writing an academic manuscript, which will be especially important if you're going on into academia or if you're going to publish an article in a journal that is in APA style. Let's say we're writing a manuscript in Microsoft Word. Most of you will use that. And I'll cover a lot of things that many people don't know because they haven't been taught the proper way to most efficiently format the manuscript. We have here a blank Word file. Then when you open it, we see that the font is Calibri. You want to change that to Times New Roman, and you want to change this to 12 to be an APA style. The next thing you want to do is to insert a header. I'll use the format blank 3 columns. And now I want to insert here a page number. And so I'll go to here, current position, a plain number. Now I want to have a running head. So I'm going to call this instructional design and financial literacy. Your running head needs to be under 50 characters. So this needs to be a total of 50 letters or less, counting the spaces. One way to do that might be to open up Metapad if you have it. Let's see. You could run, I don't have access to Metapad, it appears, but if you were going to do it in Notepad, it would be tedious because you would need to count by hand, or you could just do that here. So it could count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then so forth. And so then I've determined this is 43 characters in length. And so that will be just 7 characters under the limit for a running head. The next thing I want to do is format the header as Times New Roman because Microsoft loves their custom font called Calibri, and that's not correct for an APA style manuscript. And now I'll copy this, and the next step is to make it look different on the first page. So different first page needs to be checked. And then you'll see my header disappears. I've already copied it to clipboard because it would only appear on page 2 as a different header. So here I'll title institution. And now I'll insert a page break just to be able to see the next page. And so the page break automatically jumps to the next page, so you don't need to just insert lots of empty lines. That's a bad practice because it's not efficient. When you move stuff around, you're going to have to be manually deleting and inserting empty lines if you don't use the proper page break. So here we see that this header looks good on page 2, and then for the first page, we'll take what I have in the clipboard and put it in there, and then before the title here, I want to make sure I don't have caps lock on and put running head, just like I've done it here. Notice that I have running head, and then I have 1 space after the colon. That is the modern guidance now that we're using proportional fonts that have proportional widths like Times New Roman. You don't need to do 2 spaces after a sentence or after a colon unless the journal editor wants you to do that, or your professor. If your professor wants you to do 2 spaces, do 2 spaces, but 1 space is the way to go in my opinion. So here we have the title page, and I'm going to center that. Hopefully I'm remembering this correctly. I think it's title, name, institution. So let's say my title is Instructional Design and Financial Literacy. Evidence. And then here you would want to put your name. If you get multiple authors, you would list them. And then your institution. Okay, and now we want to take this. I'm going to select everything by pressing Control A on the keyboard. That means I'm holding Control down and pressing A. On the Mac, I think that's Command A if you're using a Mac. And I'm going up to paragraph here in the home tab and paragraph area and hitting this little tiny button at the bottom of that area. And here I want to make sure everything's double spaced. So I'm going to make this 0 after each 0 points after each line. And then here this should be double. And then this should be don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. That's very important. And then OK. Alright, so now I've got title page. Now I want to do my page 2. I could have an abstract here. For these purposes, I'm going to actually skip the abstract. There's quite often when you're doing assignments for professors, they don't want you to do the abstract. It's not required. So I'm not going to show it in this video, but normally you would have that on page 2. So you take this title now, and you actually copy it to the top of the first page of your text, and center it. So I've got it centered, and don't bold it. APA style says not to bold it. And then here you would start out with an introduction. Make sure caps lock is on. And then I might just put ... like add more here to remind me to finish my intro later and add some references. Then after that I would have a level 1 heading in APA style, 6th edition. Level 1 heading goes like in the middle. Bold title case, meaning each word is capitalized 4 letters or longer. And some other words might be capitalized too, but then some like or and words like or and would not be capitalized unless they appear at the beginning of a colon. And then it might be like there might be some more material here. And then that would not be bold. You'd use a paragraph indentation. And then you might have a level 2 heading here for something else. And so that would be bold, like level 1, but left justified and on its own line. More stuff would go here. And then perhaps you would have a level 3 heading. And so that would appear as like that. And that would be inline. Even more information. And if you were to be like more in depth, you might even have a level 4 heading, which would appear as bold italics. And then you might come back around having another level 2 heading. And then let's say you have a new level 1 heading, like you've come to the end of that section, like maybe discussion or something. You probably have resolved, or it depends on what type of paper it is. If it's a lit review, you probably wouldn't have methods as much. Well, I mean, you'd have methods, but you wouldn't have resolves. Then let's say we put like conclusion in there, and this is always good to do ahead of time. So you like set up the shell to make your writing go smoother. Using and then you would probably want to change it so it's not like weasel words where it doesn't really say anything but actually talk about something more concrete here. And so now I'll show you if you are citing something for the first time. Let's say during the early part of the paper we want to cite the Benson article for the first time, like, and we'll do it in parentheses. So let's say instructional design heuristics have shown that avoiding the and then you would obviously make sure this is actually in the article you're citing. I'm just doing this for example. And so that would actually be, in this case, it would be et al. 2002. And that would be how you'd cite that. And this is called a information prominent citation because I've given you some information and then I've cited it in parentheses. An author prominent citation would be something like Benson et al. 2002. 2 says that, and then that would be another way to do it. You might do that if you're citing a critical author in the field, like let's say for financial literacy, it might be Lizardi, or because she's critical. But if it's like just, it doesn't really matter who the authors are, you would cite it after in parentheses. Now, I want to modify this. Let's just pretend that we have another reference that only has 3 authors for the purpose of demonstration. Or we'll do 4 authors. 4 authors might be more illustrative. So we're just pretending here for me to demonstrate something, how you'd cite if you had 4 authors, because I don't have a good example here. So let's say you were citing this one for the first time. Then in that case, you would do, if you're doing an author prominent citation, and then if it was parenthetical, it would be pretty much the same, except that you would use an ampersand when it's in parentheses. So if it was in parentheses, it would look like this the first time. And that would be true for any reference that has up to 5 authors. But if it has 6 authors or more, then it's et al, meaning and others, the first time and every time. Now, if we cited this guy here and his colleagues, then the next part would have another citation, and if there was another citation of the same work, then we would use et al going forward. Recall that. So you have to really keep track of this and audit it at the end, or if you're using a reference management system, that could be helpful to do it automatically, although those are like EndNote or Zotero, but those can be tricky because they don't use APA style correctly. So here you see the first citation. We'll have to say that this is the first citation. And then after that, every subsequent citation uses et al. If there's 3 or more authors. If there's 2 or if there's 1, you would not use et al. Don't use et al if there's only 2 authors. And then if we're citing the paying article, that would be like this. Okay, so this is a little bit about how to lay out a manuscript and how to cite various people. Now after this, you're going to want to have a reference page preceded by a page break, which is on the Insert tab, and then under Pages, you go to Page Break. And if you have a wider screen, it's going to appear like that, but if your screen is narrower, then it will appear as a drop-down. And then the reference page is formatted like this. First off, we do a centered line, and we cite references. And then we get rid of our centering and go back to left justification. I will assemble these from scratch. I'm going to get rid of this one because that was just an example. And if we were going to do this, it's going to be a little tedious to do that, so I will take it and copy it, but what I'll do is I'll copy it without formatting, so you see what you have to do after that. And let's do that for both of these. No formatting, so I'm going to have to restore the formatting. The first thing that I want to do is select all of my references and change the paragraph style to have a hanging indent. So you go to Home, under Paragraph, you click the tiny little icon at the bottom right, and then here you want to go into the Indent and Spacing tab, which will open by default, and go to Hanging and then do by 0.05. A lot of people don't know this, and they actually go to like the end of the line and then put a tab in manually, and it's really terrible when they do that, because if you're going to send it to an editor and they're going to format it for a journal which isn't going to look just like this, they're going to have to undo this all by hand. So you don't want to do manually. You want to take the text and use the tool provided for it, which is the hanging indent tool. The next thing that we need is to make sure everything that needs to be in italics is in italics. So in this case, we want to take that and let's see, we want to have this in italics. I'm holding down Control to select multiple areas of text simultaneously. And now I'll go up here and hit italics. So those were the things that we needed to have in italics. The next thing to do, we could make this DOI into hyperlink, but it's not really correct style to have it be bold and blue and underlined. Fortunately, there's a way to make a hyperlink that is appearing just like regular text, but can still be clicked. And so the way we do that is we go into our document styles on the home tab of the ribbon, and we click. Maybe this button doesn't work anymore, does it? Okay, I think that I can click this one instead. Alright, so we're in our style area, and we've got this little area that says more. And then we go over to, which one is it? I don't know why this isn't working, because usually, maybe it's appearing on one of my other monitors. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So I found an alternate way to get to it. Under the Design tab, go to Colors, and then go to Customize Colors. And then you want to have Hyperlink and Followed Hyperlink be black. Both of them. Followed means it's already been clicked. So we definitely want those to both be black. I think that I would still need to get into the Style area, and for some reason, I'm not sure why, when I click it, nothing happens. So you would need to go in there if you can get it to... Oh, I see. Sorry, it was on my additional monitor. There we go. See, you gotta look for stuff like that. Like, I got 3 monitors, and I'm just showing one for this video, and I didn't see it was under a different window on one of my additional monitors. So here, we're going to need to do something even more obscure. So, like, most people don't get this right. They never go in there and do it, because it's very hard to find. So we're on our Styles menu, and we want to have the selected ones to show under Options. We've gone to Options. We want to do All Styles, because then we see the complete list. And the 2 that we need to change are Hyperlink and Followed Hyperlink. So Hyperlink, and then you can use this document as a template in the future. So you take this Word file and like copy it and start over next time, so you don't have to do it again when you're writing another manuscript. And so we made it black already under the Style tab, or the Design tab, Style area. But we haven't removed the underlining. So we've got Hyperlink, and we want to unclick Underline so it's not underlined, and hit OK, but we're not done yet because there's an alternate style for when the hyperlink has already been clicked. It usually appears purple instead of blue, and it's a followed hyperlink. So then we have to go into follow as well, modify that style, and make that not underlined. And so now we've done that, and you'll see when I hover over this, it's actually a hyperlink, even though it doesn't appear to be a hyperlink. And so then when you were writing your references list, if you were to add additional references, you can make it turn into a hyperlink by just adding a space after it, and then Word will automatically make it a hyperlink. Like right now, you see it's not a hyperlink. If I add a space after, it turns into an hyperlink. And then I could delete the extraneous space. But I would not want to hit the backspace, because if I hit backspace, it might turn back into a regular text. In this case, it did work, but another option to delete the extraneous space would be to use the left arrow key, and then the delete key on Windows, or on Mac, there's some other key that you use, because on Mac it's weird, and the delete key functions the same as the backspace key does on Windows. It's all about like deleting in front of the cursor or after the cursor. So here's a reference list, and it's appropriate to call it that. If you just had one reference, you would remove the S, but since we have 2 or more, it's appropriate to have the S for plurality. And so you would proceed, of course, in this manner to add other references. Like, let's say you were going to do I'm doing a manuscript right now on the Finra Investor Education Foundation, so I might do that and just add it right in. And then I might have like, or whatever the URL is. That's not a working URL, but I'm just doing this for demo demonstration. And then I have that URL there, but it's not formatted as a blue underlined one, which is the way that it should be ideally. And so then you would keep adding more and more on there, and you know, eventually this might be quite lengthy. You might have 10 pages of references if you're doing a really in-depth article, you know. As for the references going to a different page, you're not supposed to interfere with this. So here you see this reference spreads across 2 pages, and APA guidance is that we should leave it like that. You're not advised to insert blank lines like that. You think about that from a practical perspective. If you're putting blank lines in, then if you happen to need to add additional references up here at a later time, it's going to be inconvenient because you're going to have to adjust those blank lines. And of course you want everything to be alphabetical, and in this example it's not, because I just took 3 references and copied them over and over. And of course there's plenty of other things to look at. One of the things I didn't cover was the margins. And so for a manuscript for a journal, usually your margins are going to be 1 inch on each side. Now, if you're doing your dissertation, you have to check on that. Sometimes it's 1.5 inches on the top or something different. But for a APA regular manuscript, you want 1 inch on each side. And you are well on your way now to getting published or completing that course assignment.